some stragglers. The weather obviously is not ideal to be out and about, but thanks everyone for coming. I'm Councillor Mike Spadafora. I'm going to do some introductions and then we'll get started. This is Christine from my office. I think most of you would know Christine, just as well from my office, and Sam, who's also in my office. GM Mike Spadafora, he's Finance and Corporate Services. Director Kirk Weaver, he's in finance, but I don't know exactly the title.
Financial planning.
Financial planning, there we go. So just to give you an idea what we'll do, they have a presentation that they will share and go through. We'll ask questions on their presentation. Once we're done their presentation, the questions on their presentations, we'll allow Mike and Kirk to go home since they have the council day tomorrow they need to prepare for, and then we can go over any other questions regarding taxes or anything else that we want to discuss. Perfect. All right. Thank you. Mike, if you want to take it over.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Councillor Spadafora, for the opportunity to further engage the community and more specifically the constituents in your ward with respect to our 2026 budget process. So City of Hamilton, we have two budgets. We have a water budget as well as a tax supported budget. And the budgets are financial documents that align with Council's priorities, Council's strategic priorities, and it sets out how the City of Hamilton plans to invest as it relates to Council priorities and support Council priorities. So again, two budgets. Our tax supported budget supports approximately 70 services. That includes recreation, childcare, long-term care, as well as our transportation services. On my way in, I saw a cow and salter, so appreciative of those services on the night like tonight. Those are all funded through our tax supported program, and our tax supported program is principally funded through property taxes. Director Weaver is going to speak a little later about our water budget. And our water budget supports water, wastewater, and stormwater management. It is funded exclusively through those fees and charges. There are no property tax revenues that go towards funding our water or wastewater or storm management program. Council sought and asked staff to present our 2026 budget information a little earlier than we normally would have. And so on September 11th, staff presented a tax and water outlook for 2026. And on September 11th, what we presented to Council was based on the information we had at that time, what we saw as needed investments in both of our tax and our water budgets for 2026 on our tax supported side. Staff have forecasted a residential tax increase of 8.9%, and I'll speak to where we are now relative to September. And on our water budget, staff forecasted out a 10% increase for water and wastewater, and that was in keeping with the strategy Council had endorsed in principle in 2024 and 2025, which was 10% increases each and every year for a 10-year period. And Kirk will speak to where we sit today. In fact, our water budget is before Council tomorrow for adoption. So with respect to our budgets, again, it sets out to achieve the needed investments we need in our tax supported programs, as well as our water supported programs. Just a quick fact, municipalities cannot run deficits. Unlike federal provincial governments who can run deficits, municipalities are not allowed to record deficits. So when we set out our budget, our revenues have to equal our expenditures. And if at year end we don't, if we happen to have a deficit, under legislation we are required to either tax for that in the subsequent year or fund it through reserves. So So as it relates to municipalities, a little different than senior levels of government in that we are required legislatively by the province of Ontario to present and council adopt balanced budgets. Focusing a bit on the tax supported program, as I mentioned in September, we were forecasting a 8.9% residential tax increase. And what was driving that residential tax increase was infrastructure. Infrastructure is all of our capital programs and projects. Over this term of council, we've increased our investments in infrastructure in each of the years, 2024, 2025. Approximately 20% of your property tax increase in 2024 was directed towards additional funding for infrastructure. In 2025, approximately 25% of your property tax increase went towards increased investments in infrastructure. And so for 2026, what we're forecasting in September was of that 8.7%, 2.7% was additional funding towards infrastructure. We heard not only from the community, but through the mayor's directive of the need to provide sustainable funding for infrastructure and start to address some of our infrastructure backlogs. And that includes all of our assets, road sidewalks being a primary area of interest, but beyond roads and sidewalks, all of our assets, including our recreation assets, including we've made investments of approximately $64 million just as it relates to Macassa Lodge. We've added 20 additional beds and improvements to 44 beds in Macassa Lodge as an example of some investments we're making into infrastructure. Since September, Council, and it was Councillor Spadafora, put forward a motion to ask for a report back on the status of our capital projects and whether any of our capital projects have surplus funding. When we go through each year we go through an exercise of closing out capital projects. As capital projects are complete, if there's available funding, we identify that funding and we apply that funding typically for the upcoming year's investments in infrastructure. So again, in September, we are forecasting 2.7%. On Friday, staff will be releasing our staff proposed 2026 tax budget, and that 2.7% will be closer to 1.2%. And important to note, while the percentage increase is decreasing, we're not investing less money into infrastructure. Instead, we're applying those surplus funding from capital projects, as well staff are forecasting a year-end surplus in 2025 in our tax supported program. So we're applying those funds to offset some of the need of the 2.7%. So as we look forward to Friday, when we release our staff proposed 2026 tax budget, we'll be close to about $560 million in investments in our tax supported capital projects. And what we'll be presenting is doing so through an additional 1.2% residential tax increase for 2026. City maintenance services, these are all of those 70 services I previously mentioned. We have collective agreements, we have obligations to our employees and our workforce. Collective agreements and employee-related costs are some of the driving factors to that 2.6%. Our employee-related costs represent about half of our budget. We primarily provide services to the public, and we do that through our employees. And so approximately 50% of our budget is related to employee-related costs. So we have collective agreements. Some of our collective agreements have commitments of about 3% for 2026. Those were negotiated previous years. Another driving factor is health benefit costs. And while we're not changing healthcare plans for employees or their entitlements, what we're seeing is increased costs associated with health benefits. So those are some of the driving factors, but there's other factors in there, contractual obligations. We have contracts as it relates to waste collection in some parts of the city, as it relates to wind control in some parts of the city, and those contracts have some inflationary adjustments to them as well. So those are examples of some of the factors that are driving that 2.6%. You will see, if you have a chance to review the tax budget that, again, staff will be posting on Friday, is that city departments went through a cost-cutting exercise as it relates to the proposed budget. So there'll be more details presented on Friday through the budget documents, and I'll apologize now for the length. It's a 250-page document, but a lot of details there with respect to our investment plan and all of the capital projects for 2026. You'll see reference to reserves. The city used reserves in 2024 and 2025 to contain the property tax increase while dealing with some of our crises that we were dealing with. And we weren't alone, whether it was opioid crises or housing crises, as well as some of those collective bargaining obligations that I made reference to coming out of that pandemic. We also had some extraordinary inflation pressures coming out of that pandemic. I mentioned Newcastle Lodge. The cost of that program or project really increased after the pandemic, as well as our wastewater treatment plant, our transit storage facility. We really saw an escalation in the costs of some of our projects, in part supply chain issues, in part meeting demands for contractors and resources drove some of those inflationary pressures. So what we did was we drew from reserves in 2024, 25, and continue forecasted for 26, 27, and to 2028. We can't do that indefinitely. We can't draw from our bank account indefinitely to pay our costs. And so the strategy was to wean ourselves off of those reserves and to offset those reserve funding through sustainable funding. Unfortunately, for municipalities, sustainable funding tends to be property taxes, because we're not realizing the same growth in non-property tax revenues, such as provincial subsidies, transfer payments, and other sources of revenue. So that's a contributing factor to our September forecast, and you'll see in our staff report on Friday. There were a series of council referred items. These are investments that are brought to council in year. Some examples were funding for Hamilton Art Gallery, some additional funding for community groups. We fund community groups through a City of Richmond fund. Those funds are grant funds that go out to community groups who then invest out in the community. That too was a council referred item for 2026, some additional referrals for 2026, and then staff put forward some investment plans referred to as business cases. At the time in September, that represented about 0.9%. Staff had gone through the exercise of reviewing those, and I can tell you it will be lower than 0.9% when tabled on Friday. And then finally, boards and agencies. Board and agencies include Hamilton Public Library, Hamilton Police Services, Public Health, our 5 conservation authorities that we fund. Not only do we fund Hamilton Conservation Authority principally, we're about 98%, plus Whistler provides about 2%, but because of watersheds and boundaries, we also fund parts of the Grand River, Niagara, Alton, conservation authorities as well. So the conservation authorities, Royal Botanical Gardens, they're all captured under boards and agencies, and then September boards and agencies were contributing to about 0.8% of that 8.9%. So that just provides a breakdown to some of the factors that made up that 8.9% forecast back in September. With respect to the city's gross, so gross is all in, the expenditures that are funded by property taxes, funded through user fees such as reg recreation or transit user fees funded through the provincial government, such as it relates to Ontario Works or public health, where we have cost share programs, as well as the infrastructure. All in, our 2025 tax supported budget was $2.8 billion. And you can see that we mentioned previously roads. Roads and transit, our transportation network, represents the majority of our investments. Makes sense. In terms of the value of our assets, roads and sidewalks on the tax supported side make up the majority of the value of our assets. Water and wastewater is one of the most capital intensive industries. And so approximately 70% of your water and wastewater rates, billings go towards infrastructure. And going forward, those increases are necessary to fund infrastructure. So you can see the breakdown in terms of transportation, waste, other boards and agencies. I talked a bit about infrastructure. So approximately $200 million of our property tax revenues went towards funding our infrastructure financing plan. I mentioned it was $655 million in total. Part of that's funded through development charges. Part of that's funded through provincial gas tax revenues. Those are dedicated to transit. So the replacement of some buses, as well as some investments in our transportation system. We get about $38 million each year in what's referred to now as Canada. Actually, it has a new name, I think, as of last week. Previously called Canada Community Benefit Fund, previously called federal gas tax revenues. So the portion, when you fill up your vehicle, a portion of those fees charges in terms of the price of gas is shared with municipalities. It's about $38 million each year, and we invest the majority of that in transportation, roads, as well as about $3.8 million in transit. Parks and Recreation, about $184 million. You'll see planning and growth, fire, public health, and emergency services, and that would include paramedic services, social services. Social services has been an area of increasing need for investment, principally around housing. Housing has been, again, in the midst of the housing crisis. We've made incremental investments in 2024 and 2025. We're close to about $190 million in housing investments in 2025. Municipality funds about 60% of that, and that's part of the challenge municipalities are facing, is while we can't control all the factors that affect housing affordability and the housing crisis, the level of funding for senior levels of government is not increasing. Provincial government's about $27 million in 2025, will be at about $27 million in 2026. So as the need to invest as it relates to that crisis increases, we're having to fall on property taxes to help that fund that shortfall. Housing right here at about $192 million, and then police is about $262 million. Part of the challenge council has as they deliberate on the budget is part of the pie. About 40% of this is part of the pie, 40% of your property taxes. Council really does not have any or limited authority over. No authority over, what's not shown here, is about 15% of your property taxes. It's education property taxes. We collect them, we remit them to the school boards. With respect to some of these services, whether it's social services, public health, the province prescribes the level of service, and council cannot affect that level of service, but we are receiving the same level of financial support from senior levels of government as it relates to those levels of services. And then with police services, the accountability or that direct relationship resides with the County Police Services Board in the service, and so they determine between the board and the service the level of service that's presented to council, both in the form of an operating and capital budget, and that's what council ultimately considers is the global police services budget. both their operating and their capital needs. So that was the expenditure side, as I mentioned. We're required to match our revenues with our expenditures. So in 2025, we had $2.8 billion in expenditures and $2.8 billion in revenues. I mentioned a bit about government grants and subsidies. So these are all of those, whether it's Ontario Works, whether it's public health, 50% of paramedic services, portions of mental police services. Those are all examples of where we receive some funding from senior levels of government. There's this reference to payment in lieu of taxes. Payment in lieu of taxes. Senior levels of government do not pay property taxes as you do. It's not based on market value of their properties. They determine a rate to pay to municipalities for their facilities in the city of Hamilton. So whether it's Mohawk College, Master University, or hospitals. Part of our challenge, a few challenges. With respect to post-secondary hospitals, we receive $75 per full-time enrolled student and $75 per hospital bed. That $75 has not changed since 1987. It was set at $75 in 87, it's $75 today. Some of what is affecting us going into 2026, you'll likely have read about, in part it's federal policies as well as some provincial policy changes. So as the federal government has amended their immigration policies, you might have read the impact it's having on universities and colleges as it relates to their enrollment numbers. That has an impact then on the city of Hamilton. As I mentioned, we receive $75 per full-time enrolled student. So as enrollment numbers decline, so too do our revenues from Mohawk and from McMaster University. So those are some of the headwinds we're going to face for 2026. The other impact we have is in terms of the services that they demand, municipal services, and they pay towards. Students rely heavily on transit and pay towards transit. And so when student enrollment numbers decline, so too do some of our transit revenues as it relates to students. So we're seeing some of those indirect impacts of other levels of government onto our services and onto our costs. So I just mentioned transit. So transit would fall here in terms of fees. We have what are referred to as user fees for those who benefit from the service, pay part of the cost. They don't pay the full cost of the service, but they pay part of the cost. So whether that's recreation, whether that's transit, whether that's waste at the transfer stations, and our community recycling stations, those represent about $191 million. I talked a bit about reserves. We use reserves in part to replace aging infrastructure. I'll give an example. We set money aside into reserves, into a bank account, so that every 12 years when we have to replace a bus, that money is there in reserve. So year 12, the money's there when we replace the bus. Each year we put money aside, whether it's buses, whether it's fire trucks, whether it's our public works vehicles. We set money aside into our reserves, and then we draw from reserves when we have to replace those. Development charges, you might have heard a bit about development charges. Development charges are charges that developers pay as it relates to growth enabling infrastructure when a project goes up and we have to put in infrastructure, whether it's water or wastewater or roads. A portion of the cost is funded through development charges. And so as it relates to our capital program, development charges approximately $184 million. We do expect this to decrease for 2026, principally because of what we're witnessing in the broader development community. As we see a slowdown in growth projects, we expect some of these revenues streams will adjust. We're addressing this and mitigating it by looking at all of our capital projects and revising the forecast for those projects. If we were assuming that we needed to put some growth enabling infrastructure in to accommodate some developments in 2026. But those developments are now going to be deferred or paused to 2028, 29. We're pausing those projects to try to align with the timing for the capital projects. So while the development charges may drop off, our investments will drop as well as we pause some of those projects. And finally, investment income and other revenue. The money that we do have aside in reserves, they sit either with Schedule 1 banks, and so we're very conservative. We invest in bonds, or fixed income where there's relatively low risk. We do have some in equity markets, but very limited in equity markets. So we try to use our revenue to help generate revenue to offset some of our issues. In October, the mayor provided a directive to the city manager and to myself, the GM of Finance and Corporate Services, and that directive set out to hold the tax increase 4.25% for 2026. It goes on to speak to the need to provide sustainable infrastructure in light of the broader affordability challenges our community is facing, citizens are facing, businesses are facing, is again to continue to invest in infrastructure, review our services, focus on some of our core services, and to present a budget tax increase at around 4.25%. And you'll read more through our staff proposed budget on Friday. So as I mentioned, the directive went on to identify the need to ensure that we continue to invest in critical infrastructure. We balance affordability challenges with multi-generational investments. We have some really big multi-generational investments on our water and wastewater side. Our wastewater treatment plant has an expansion to help to accommodate for growth beyond 2031, but we have to have a minimum plan for 2031, as well as an expansion at our Woodward water treatment plant, and finally a renewal of our Dundas wastewater treatment plant. So recognizing those are projects that will have a useful life of 40, 50 years, we don't fund that from property taxpayers today. Yes, you will pay a portion of that, but we fund it through debt, recognizing that future generations are going to benefit from these assets. So we try to spread out the cost associated with the investment over those future generations. Today's taxpayers, but future generations as well. And then you'll see a number of other directives or areas to focus on, including, as I just mentioned, debt and reserves, reviewing capital projects to align with capacity. What that really means is if we don't have the resources to deliver our capital project in 26, consider deferring that capital project to a year when we have the resources to deliver that capital project. So try to align the timing of the need with the time, with the capacity that you have to deliver on that. So again, in terms of each 1% in terms of a residential tax increase represents about $13 million in additional revenues for us. As I mentioned, September, we have forecasted 8.9%. As per the mayor's directive, the budget target is 4.25%, and in order to achieve 4.25%, it would require about $60 million of reductions in savings. You'll read a bit more again on Friday in terms of some of the work that staff have done with respect to the directive and achieving the targeted savings related to that directive. So in terms of options, we've gone through looking at mitigation strategies. I talked about capital projects that have surplus funding. We call those WIPs. You'll see WIPs in reference works in progress. Our user fee was approved. Our user fee bylaw, our user fee schedule was approved by committee on Wednesday and goes to council. A number of our user fees are increasing by about 3.6%, some less, some more, but the majority of our user fees are increasing by about 3.6%. Looking at reserves, talked a bit about debt and capital financing. So just in terms of, I mentioned previously, over this term of council, again, about 1.2% of your property tax increase went towards funding of infrastructure. 2025, it was about 2.5 of the 5.59. 6% increase. And for 2026, we're forecasting 3.37, but we're able to offset some of that through the WIP funding as well as your surpluses. But what you can see here is the trajectory in terms of our investments in infrastructure. It's been increasing. We recognize we have a backlog, and given the state of our infrastructure, we need to continue to invest in infrastructure and replacing our infrastructure. And so that's what this strategy set out to do. 2026, we recognize the challenge with affordability, and as I mentioned, that 3.37 will be closer to 1.2%, 1% in our market. So with respect to the tax budget process, again, we presented the outlook in September. Staff were directed to present a staff proposed 2026 tax budget, and we're doing so on December 12th, this Friday, so that will be posted on our website, and you can access that on our website. And then sometime in January, we expect the mayor to propose a budget sometime in the middle of January, and then council has about 30 days to deliberate on the mayor's proposed budget. So while staff are proposing a budget, the process really doesn't start until the mayor proposes a budget, and we expect that sometime in the middle of January, and that would bring us to an adoption sometime in the middle of February or early March. So thank you for participating tonight. This is a series of public engagements. We did 6 public engagements in support of the mayor's office leading up to the mayor's directive. Kirk and I have done a few of these. Board public engagement sessions, always appreciate the opportunity to share information and to listen from constituents. So happy to be here tonight. These are just some of the metrics in terms of our engagement process up to, I would say, November of this year. And now I'm going to pass it over to Kirk to provide an overview of our 2026 water budget.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for coming out, all of you tonight, and spending the time. I'll go over a few highlights of the 2026 water budget. You would have noticed Mike doesn't need notes. I need notes in front of me, so I'm going to be standing here looking at my notes. That's one of the reasons he's here. I'm sure there's a few others too, but I don't wander right from it. So the 2026 water budget, proposed water budget, is the budget for the water, wastewater, and stormwater program for the city. The proposed budget currently before council reflects a 5.82% increase for 2026, and we do 10-year forecasts. So for 2027 through 2033, based on what we know today, 57% increases and current 5% increases in the last 2 years of the forecast. This is a shift from the strategy we followed for the past couple of years that had a 10% increase planned for each of the next 10 years. So we brought the percentage down to 2026. And just, so how did we do that? So Hamilton Water staff reviewed the status of various projects and the timing and current economic conditions that Mike referenced, and realigned their capital program to reflect where these projects actually were and where they're going when the timing of those projects is going to take place. And so a number of those projects moved from 2026 out to future years, which allowed us in finance to review the capital financing plan. If we continued with a 10% increase in 2026, we would have ended up with a more than $30 million capital surplus, which would have gone into a reserve, and it's essentially taking dollars from today's ratepayers that aren't needed today. So that allowed us to revise our forecast, and that's how we arrived at 5.82%. So it balances affordability in 2026. And also you'll see it goes from 7% down from the 10% in the middle years because of the compounding effect. The same projects are still happening over the 10-year forecast, but the amount of the percentage increase doesn't need to go up 10% for the life of the forecast. We're also using debt and reserves prudently, we believe, to help keep these rates lower. And we use debt, as Mike mentioned, for these significant multi-generational projects that are going to benefit future generations, so that the debt that we take on now will be paid for by future generations. And the examples of those projects are the Woodward water treatment plant, the Woodward wastewater treatment plant, which both have several $100 million of planned investments over the next 4 to 7 years. So what's included in the 2026 proposed budget? So it represents $346 million in total expenditures. $252 million of that is for capital. So Mike mentioned water and wastewater, stormwater programs are heavily capital intensive. They're, the water utility sector is the second only to, I believe, railways in terms of their capital intensity needs. So in order to generate that revenue, $343 million comes from ratepayers, with a smaller amount, $3.4 million, coming from non-rate revenue. And non-rate revenue represents some small grants that we've received from senior levels of government, as well as some long-term contracts we have for the sale of water to Halton and Halton region. Overall, over the 10-year capital program is $4.6 billion of capital investment forecast between now and 2035. And that's a 0.72 million increase over last year's forecast. So the highlight there is we're still making those capital investments, just not as much of it is happening in 2026 as originally planned. So this slide is intended to highlight the capital program over the next 10 years. So starting on the left is 2026 investment, $252 million, about 42% for wastewater, 44% related to water infrastructure, and stormwater program represents about 14% of that. And that's a relatively consistent ratio throughout the life of the 10-year forecast. You'll see about $2 billion of investments planned between 26 and 29. Some of that will be in those major capital projects that I noted both in Woodward and also the Dundas treatment plant. We're totaling also over the life of the 10-year program $4.6 billion. And this slide is just highlighted that $4.6 billion where it comes from. So you'll see about $1.6 billion, so 38% comes from debt, and another 16% from external DC debt, which is development charge debt. And the reason those two pieces of pie are separated is development charges debt is paid for by future development charges, not from ratepayers. So we can separate that out so that you can see what the impact of the development charges growth-related debt is. Contribution from rates is 1.7 or about 1.7 billion or 40% of that forecast $4.6 billion. And there's also some use of reserves. And the subsidy and other revenue, we built in about $100 million in assumed revenue from federal and provincial governments over the 10-year forecast that we'll need to work with senior levels of government on an advocacy effort to make sure that we're able to obtain those funds. So in summary, if adopted, the 2026 water budget will represent an average increase of $61.82 annually, or $5.15 a month, for a total of $1,123. The final meeting for that is planned at tomorrow's council meeting. The process is similar to what Mike described for the tax budget, where the rate budget was proposed by the mayor, released on November the 10th. That started the 30-day period for amendments to be made to that budget. We held 2 general issues committee meetings on November 24th and 28th where councilors could make amendments, and tomorrow's meeting is the third final opportunity for that to happen. Once those amendments are complete, the budget becomes adopted sometime between December 10th or January 4th, depending on what happens with the amendments and the process around vetoes and all of that kind of interesting process that we're into now. And that's the end of my slides. There's one last slide on tax assistance programs that I'll let Mike speak to, but there's information on our website on all of these items as well, and they're not necessarily generally well known, but it's important that folks know about them.
Thanks, Greg. And so we just wanted to share some of this information with respect to some of the programs available, not only to individuals, but in the case of charities and not-for-profits, they're eligible for 40% property tax rebate. Seniors are eligible for a tax rebate. There's 2 qualifying criteria they have to meet, and that's an income threshold and a average assessed value of the property. Both of those are relatively high and tended to be more generous in terms of the tax rebate program. We also have a program for low-income and individuals with disabilities where their property taxes can be deferred. So the city will realize the property taxes when the property is transacted or sold. But in an effort to support individuals to stay at home, we have that program for low-income seniors as well, and individuals with disabilities. We also have a compassionate appeals program if someone is going through hardship, some medical circumstances that prohibits them from meeting their property tax obligation. There's a compassionate appeals program for those individuals as well. And finally, legislatively, veterans get a 100% rebate, and that's a privilege prescribed. So sharing that information in part because, well, 85% of property taxpayers, residential, commercial, and industrial, pay their property taxes and pay them on time. We are seeing an increasing trend with respect to what we call arrears, and it seems to be more so on the utility side. Our water and wastewater is billed currently by electric. That's changing over to City of Hamilton. City of Hamilton's assuming billing the water and wastewater in April. If you're on a pre-authorized payment plan with Electra, you'll receive a letter from City of Hamilton. Please don't throw that in the garbage as again, recyclables or waste. That is information now that those individuals who were on a pre-authorized payment plan with Electra, they need to enter into a pre-authorized payment plan with the City of Hamilton. So I please encourage you, if you are on such a plan with Electra, you'll have received this week correspondence from the city. Please, I ask you please to enroll into that pre-authorized. It's not a phishing campaign. It is the need for us to gather that information. Unfortunately, Electric can't share that information under privacy rules. They can't share that information with us. We have to collect that information directly from residents and businesses. So again, while 85% are paying their property taxes in full and on time, we are seeing an increasing trend, and it's principally around utilities. It may be that individuals are having a difficult time with respect to their hydro and making partial payments, and unfortunately, that then results in a balance owing with respect to water and wastewater. Important to note, we do not shut off water and wastewater services for any individuals or businesses in the City of Hamilton. If you fall into arrears, we apply it to your property tax, and we collect it through your property taxes. But again, it's an essential service, and we don't shut off those services. So again, just leaving this for everyone's information and encourage you, please visit the city's website, hamilton.ca. Under taxation, we have this information on our website. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to present. And if you have any questions, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Absolutely, thanks, Mike and Kirk. I'm gonna leave you the microphone because you're probably gonna be the one answering, and I don't need one. As you know from council, I'm loud enough. So if we have any questions specific on the presentation, obviously if we have Ward 14 specific non-property tax questions, we can do those after Gio and the director go home. But specific to what was presented here, fire away, and Mike and Kirk will do their best to answer your questions.
Could you follow up the slide that dictates where road expenses are?
This slide?
Yeah. Okay, the proportion for roads, which one is it?
So roads would fall into our transportation.
Of that, is that where the cost for the length of the Red Hill are?
It would be in terms of the operation of those two roads.
Okay, knowing that it's 357 million, how much is spent for the link in Red Hill? Because I've been chasing this for 4 years now, about the province taking it over. We can't afford it. It's time for somebody to do something about it, and take that money and put it toward our roads, not roads that people drive through. So what's the update on it?
So, first off, I don't have the number tonight, but I know we have the number, so happy to share that number. Why do I know we have the number? We have been advocating to the province as recent as this year, given that they've uploaded roads in Toronto, roads in the city of Ottawa. We've asked for equal treatment with respect to the Parkway and the Expressway. It may be in that $6 million, but I could be wrong annually for just the operations and maintenance of the road. But what that doesn't include is, as a future date, the need to expand that road. So again, we are advocating to the Premier and to the province for equal treatment with the city of Toronto.
Is there somebody dedicated to spearhead that?
We do have a director of government relations, Chris Phillips, who gets to carry a number of files. The Red Hill Roadway and Expressway, and Kirk's presentation around water, wastewater. We've also asked the federal government for about $213 million in grant funding for our Woodward wastewater treatment and expansion. They have a program with respect to housing and how to support increased supply of housing. That project is principally growth related. 90% of that is growth related. So we've equally submitted an application for about $213 million to the federal government.
I'm just going to add to that. So just to give you a bit of an idea, I went to AMO in January with the mayor and a few councils. We've been with the Minister of Transportation. He's well aware that we'd like to do this. We talked about it. I think I could say with confidence they're open to it. They asked the mayor for an official request, which the mayor, I believe, has already sent. And then it's a matter of working out the details. They weren't, I could say the minister was like, oh, no, we're not even going to look at something like that. They are open to it. They understand it's more of a regional road now, as opposed to a road that services Hamilton. It's a road that services a lot of transportation, takes people from Brantford, London area to Niagara. It's a highway.
It's a trucking.
Yeah, so they understand that. They made it pretty clear in our delegation with the minister that they understand that, and I didn't see a no right off the bat. Does that mean it's going to happen overnight? I don't think so.
Like, in fairness, we've been hearing that since 1923.
Well,
May I make a suggestion?
I was born slightly after that,
Okay, sorry. May I make a suggestion that maybe there should be some more information put in the spec, or whatever, to get most people aware of what's going on? And secondly, then they may start pushing the provincial representatives to it. I think it's got to be highlighted.
yeah, bring it to the forefront so people can push for it and advocate for it. If that's
Because we
something
could
they
use that money on our own roads.
want. Yeah. That's it. Sorry, Bill. Yes.
Gentlemen, is there anywhere where it shows or gives an indication of the upside for the province on the 403 and the Queenie having to spend less money because people are driving on the Lincoln step to get around and not have to go over the Skyway Bridge? That's the justification. Mind you, I think it's a weak argument because under the Bob Gray NDP government, Hamilton to committed to, we'll do the operating budget if you build the highway, and we went for that. Now it's 20 years later, and we're going, no, we can't afford that.
I'll let Jim, I don't know, was it a 50-50 cost share on the link and the red one?
I think it started at 70-30, it might have ended up 50-50, where the provincial government had originally committed to 70%. And that was a point in time. I mean, again, what we are highlighting is just an equity principle. The fact that they uploaded the Gardner, the fact that they uploaded a expressway city of Ottawa. We're not alone. Windsor, London, we all have these sort of regional bypasses, expressways, and I expect we're not alone. Other municipalities are wanting to be treated.
Now, in those costs that are associated, is it the police costs looking after it, the fire when there's an issue? Where's that cost buried? Is that in the transportation? Or is that in the police and the fire budget?
So those activities would fall within the fire as well as the
So it's costing us even more money.
Yeah, and to be fair, if it was uploaded to the province, we would still be incurring, if the police were dispatched to deal with an accident, we wouldn't recover from the province or fire. Those would still be local responsibilities.
OPP wouldn't.
OPP wouldn't do it, nor necessarily would we want OPP and their contractual costs.
The OPP can go anywhere in Ontario. They can arrest people right in Hamilton, the OPP, because they're Ontario provincial police. They look after the 403 and the QEW, right? Hamilton will still look after.
Yeah. There are provincial roadways, and then there are regional roadways. And so local and the regional roadways are the municipality's responsibility, and then those provincial roadways, at 556, 403, are OPP's responsibility.
So getting on your operation costs, have you ever thought of going with the city with going to a defined benefit to a defined cost benefit?
Yeah. So I can say, I don't know that we've ever considered it. I'll share my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I think there's opportunities for that next generation who may want, the next generation necessarily aren't as committed to an employer for the same period of time as our parents might have been or we may be. And so the benefits of a defined contribution plan or other plans are individuals can move around. They can go work in the public service for 10 years, go work in the not-for-profit sector for 10 years, go work in the profit sector. And so I'm just sharing my own personal opinion. I think it's maybe something that evolves over time to attract and retain that next generation.
Because
They may want that flexibility.
a lot of companies have done that.
And I think a lot of companies do it as a cost saving
Yes.
measure. But I think in terms of recruitment and retention, I've got a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old, and they will not stay with an employer, I expect, for 10 years or 15 years. They're chasing different experiences. They're looking for different experiences. They're looking for growth opportunities. They're not tied to the city. They're not tied to the country. I believe their mother. I think they're running away from their mother. It's not their mother. It's got to be their mother.
No, I just want you to know this is being recorded. So whatever happens with you and your wife's your fault. I know Kojo had a question at the back. Kojo, go ahead.
Yeah, can you share the council deferred items? The list of council deferred items?
Yeah. So the council referred items. So I believe there were 6. 2 related to the art gallery. We provide heating and cooling to the art gallery, and so some funding of about $800,000 in heating and cooling. Financial costs for the art gallery, and then the art gallery saw some additional funding to make them sustainable as it relates to the collection that they support, they deliver. The city actually owns part of that collection, so it's a bit of a shared responsibility. So I believe for the art gallery in total it was about $2.5 million for those two. The City of Richmond fund was about $680,000 plus another 70 for an appeal process, so maybe around $750,000 for the City of Richmond fund. That's the grant program that we provide to community groups. There was about $270,000, I believe, for bike share that was referred, and the last one was asylum seekers. So asylum seekers, at the time of the September report, I believe we were around $3.4 million of the cost to support asylum seekers who were locating in the city of Hamilton, providing them the support services they required. Since September, we received a commitment from the federal government for 80% of that cost for 2026, dropping to 75% of the cost in 2027. So it'll be about $1.2 million that we'll be presenting outright. I think that's the sum of the list of items that we're referring to. And if I'm wrong, it's because I don't have notes that are.
I was going to say you got a better memory than me. So,
Yes.
Given that there's a housing crisis and that, let's call them the 30, 35-year-olds to about 40, 45-year-olds don't seem to be buying houses as much, what is the impact 10, 20 years out if these kids can't buy houses, and where are you going to get your property tax money from? Because you're going to become the me instead. That's what I worry about, which is not a big deal, frankly, for me now. But when I'm in my 80s, I'm kind of thinking I'll be having to go for a part-time job somewhere to pay my taxes.
Yeah. So it's something that we're very mindful of, and so we are adjusting in 2026 for some of the trends that we're seeing. So as it relates to population, if we look at the last 3 years, our population annual growth was 2.2%. Using Conference Board of Canada's projections for the next 5 years, and this is Hamilton, Burlington, Grimsby, they grouped it into that region area. It's 0.2, 0.2, 0.6, 0.8. So you can see our population is not projected to grow at the same pace as it grew in the last 3 years. Part that's contributing to that is migration. Migration numbers are projected to decrease while they're increasing, projected to increase the next 5 years on average by about 30%. That's 70% less than the last 3 years. So we have to plan for that. We have to recognize if we're going to have less population growth, we will have growth, but it will be less growth. We're having to adjust some of our programs. We do expect population will rebound. There will be a time when the population numbers will grow, and we're trying to align our investment plan with the population plan. But we're really mindful, the City of Hamilton is one of the municipalities with higher concentration of aged individuals in the municipality. And as I mentioned, I have a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old. If we don't retain those individuals in community, that's a lost opportunity for us, especially for those who are being educated at Master, Mohawk, is trying to keep them. So we do have programs across the corporation, our colleagues, economic development planning, ways to try to retain individuals. We've invested, council has made a decision to try to spur some development and to help not only development, but the local labor force. We have, what is in reference to development charges? We have a number of programs where we discount development charges. Staff recommended and council supported an additional 20% discount on development charges to try to help the local development community and to try to help maintain the local skilled labor force. What we were told, and I think this is factual, is that skilled labor force are aged as well. And those individuals will, if there's not work, they're going to leave their skills, and there will be the support for mentoring and apprenticeships for that next generation. So in response to that, as council endorsed a 20% discount, we did a number of other measures. We had what were called community benefit charges. If you had a building of more than 5 floors, 10 units, there was an additional charge. We waived it we recommended council support waiving it for 2025 and for 2026 to try to help as well the local market. And then with respect to some of our other fees and charges, we're reviewing those as well in response to trying to support the local market. But to be clear, our understanding is that condominium market that was really a driver to our growth is not going to come back soon. And we see that the investors who drove some of that condominium market, they're no longer participating in those styles of development. And so the demand seems to be, and it makes sense for young people, it seems to be townhouses, row houses, forms of development that are more affordable for them than a single detached unit. And they don't want the 500 square foot condominium box as well. So that seems to be where we're seeing opportunities based on what the development community is telling us where to grow.
Sorry, just before and then I'll come to you.
Okay, I just wanted to go on that.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
That's
Then
all.
I'll come
So
back to you.
rental properties, do they pay the same as next door, a single family home? The same property taxes? Does it make
If
sense?
it's the exact same home, let's say it's a bungalow, 2,200
Yeah.
square foot, the same property taxes.
Okay, so next door to us, there is a minimum of 6 adults living in it, and a minimum, on a good day, 6 cars at that home on our roads. And they're paying the same property taxes towards the roads and infrastructure as we are with 2 adults and a teenager in our home.
They are.
That doesn't work.
They are. I'll say we are trying to encourage individuals using their properties, fully maximizing their home. So whether it's secondary suites or units where they can add another unit in the basement. And so we are encouraging that form of intensification. I appreciate the challenges of having 5 vehicles.
You could come stay at my house for a week and see how you like it.
But they do pay the same property. They pay the same property taxes, and while we do encourage, intensification, but the other factor is it has to be legal in the sense of it can't be a boarding house that's unlicensed as a boarding house.
Go ahead.
We've been an amalgamated city for a number of years now. What impact to those communities when we see improvements such as water, roads, etc.? Where does that land on them that might reduce our taxes in this city, if at all?
Yeah, I'll see if I understand the question. The starting carryovers from post-amalgamation are what we call area-rated services. So we still have transit as an area-rated service. So, and it's based on former municipality and the number of kilometers of service in the former municipality. So in the city of Hamilton, I think city of Hamilton likely pays around 75, 78% of the cost of transit, because 75 to 78% of the kilometers are within the geographic boundary of the former city of Hamilton. So that's one of the services that there's still a hangover post-amalgamation. Now, having just joined the city post-amalgamation, 2001, I can tell you that that ratio has been changing. It's been moving away from the city of Hamilton gradually. But what that tells you is the suburban areas, former suburban areas, are receiving more transit service, in part they're asking for more transit service, in part to provide access for individuals, whether again, young people who are employed in some of the retail areas in the former municipality. So that's one of the areas that are area rated. Fire is also area rated, a little more differently, but those are the only 2 services that continue to be area rated. Bit of still a hangover from amalgamation.
What I'm trying to say is that we see an increase in or improvement in water service. Does that also include Dundas? water down?
It does.
And do they pay taxes and should reflect on that chart from any city that's amalgamated and how much it's costing them and how much it impacts our budget should be on that chart?
So in the case of water, wastewater, none of that is funded from property taxes. It's all based on user fees. So you pay according to how much you use. Average household in the city of Hamilton is 200 cubic meters, 1 cubic meter is 1,000 liters. And so whether you live in Ancaster, Dundas, Stony Creek, Glenbrook, it's dependent on how much water and wastewater you use. With respect to property taxes, again, everyone's treated equally. It's really based on your average assessment. And we know that in some of those geographic areas, the average assessment is higher than, for instance, the lower city. For a number of reasons, but market value and the style of homes and characteristics of homes. So again, it's just those two services that still are treated differently dependent on where your property resides in former municipalities. Did I answer? If not, I'm happy to take it.
Is
Often,
bike lanes part of that as well?
all those services are shared equally across. So bike lanes, active transportation, it's not area rated. It's not the properties within the geographic area where the bike lanes are. They're shared equally across the whole
I have
city.
real issues with the bike lanes. What I'm seeing, the improvements on bike lanes, we've got curbs now, small curbs and poles. If I talk to bikers, they don't want to use them because they're dangerous now, because they have little blocks and poles, cars going past, it gets cluttered with debris. They don't even want to go in there. So that extra cost, we don't really see how many miles we're going to put in on the city. Is it paid off? Because it looks like it's not when you talk to bikers. They don't want you to go in there, but the debris in the winter time, you don't have the equipment to get in there to clean it out. I see a lot of them in Ancaster are taken down already.
Yeah, not really a question that I would ask the GM of finance to ask. I mean, he could talk to the cost of maybe, I don't know what he'd have off the top of his head, the cost of the bike lanes, but that's something that,
Well, I think, Mike, I'm just thinking
Yeah, no,
it's really getting out of hand.
I'm not disagreeing with you. We had a cycling plan.
Yeah.
That was, I think it was a 30-year plan. At the beginning of this term of council, it was, at the budget time, it was asked to be accelerated from a 30-year plan, I believe, to a 3-year plan, and then it got delayed, and Mike stopped me whenever I make a mistake. I think now we're at a 5-year accelerated plan. I don't disagree that maybe we can slow it down, I would say, because again, when you're trying, for me, it's all about balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to invest in infrastructure, we want to invest in waste, we want to invest in everything, but we don't have the money to do that. So we got to balance it out. So when we want to speed up bike lanes and we want to speed up or increase our social service investment, we want to increase all these investments, you got to just understand that we're also at a point where there's some affordability concerns across the city. So for me, it's about balancing it. I think we can slow down the bike lane sort of expansion, especially right now. But again, that's not something I can do on my own. The plan's in place. Is it possible that we can start delaying that a little bit more, moving those projects further out so we can spread the cost out? That's definitely something that we can look at.
Yeah, but that little curve, if you look at it,
Yeah, I know.
if the car hits it,
Yeah.
it's going to project that vehicle higher on that biker, more damage to that biker.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's really wrong.
Mike's the cyclist, not me. As you can see, he's in a lot better shape than I am, but I don't disagree with that. I see there's one on Wilson Street, that cement curb, I see it a lot of times protruding into the bike lane.
Yeah.
So if there's a cyclist coming down at a decent speed, and that cement curb is now in the bike lane because a car or something has hit it, it becomes dangerous. But
Our mark line did everything it should do, right?
some cyclists would disagree with you.
We don't need the costs to be
Yeah.
related to that, and it puts bikers at more risk, as far as I'm concerned.
Anybody else for the presentation that Mike, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe just, I'm probably a victim of gossip, but
I'll do that.
just,
Did my wife have a comment
probably hangover for 20 years ago. So you mentioned earlier that the city is not allowed to carry a deficit, right? I can recall at one time that Toronto did carry a deficit. Is that still the case? And if it is, how do they manage to get around it? Because we're not allowed to do that. And they can run for 3 years, they bail us out.
Toronto's special, but I'll let
Say the same thing. I'll say Toronto is treated differently than other municipalities.
They're special. So that's what
So, if, we mentioned about the uploading of roadways. When the city of Toronto was looking at a significant deficit, there was negotiations with the province, and the province agreed to upload the Gardner Expressway. The Gardner Expressway is 20% of their roads capital program. That one roadway represented 20% of their annual budget for roads. And then beyond Gardner were the subways. And so you've seen these negotiations, and this is my interpretation. You see these negotiations, you know, whether it involves the CNE properties, the Gardner. So to the councilor's comment, they are treated differently than other municipalities. And so whether those are bailouts at end of year, you know, that's my impression, but again, I'm not in the room with the city of
Is
Toronto.
it possible to just have a political muscle? Because you're talking 3 million people.
I think the
We don't
size,
have 3 million people, so.
I think the size of Toronto is
You're saying,
definitely.
hey, the votes are gonna kill us if we don't acquiesce here.
It's not just votes. I don't think it's just votes. Like they're the biggest city in the province. Like there's a lot of juice in that
Oh,
city.
sure,
Right?
yeah.
So
I can't help but wonder if you went to London, Kitchener, Hamilton, Cambridge, Brantford, Sudbury, Ottawa, or whatever, and said, hey, why are we being discriminated against? Because big bad Toronto can vote us off, and the rest of us, sort of, there is only one taxpayer, right?
yeah, you're right.
And what I was going to say, I think every municipality probably does do the advocacy that we were discussing, whether it's for the expressway and throughway, whether it's for wastewater treatment. I can tell you, Northern Ontario, their real challenge is the lack of density. So, you know, given their winters, they're plowing a lot of roads that do not have high density. So they're asking for relief as well in terms of those costs. Each municipality has its own challenges and likely is advocating for whatever is a factor in their municipality. But yeah, having those opportunities to have those conversations with the province or federal government would be nice.
Anyone else on the presentation? Wastewater, taxes, besides the fact you don't like your property tax, we know that. Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Mike, there's a couple of groups, this was on the GIC meeting, the last one looking for $1 million to improve access to the downtown core. Brad Clark, the councilor, brought it up that we've spent millions in the core trying to change it. That, I think that one was refused. The other one is of interest is this Linda Lissick.
The director of climate change. Yeah.
This slush fund, I don't see that on there, $2.5 million for a slush fund for a group that has no law to implement anything they say. They just say it, oh well, they're just adding to what we already have. We have the government doing environmental assessment on Hamilton after use because of industrial base. We don't need 3 of them now. We got Environment Hamilton, got this new one, and we got the government in here. How many times do we have to spend like $2.5 million slush one and keep people going for 10 years salary that we don't need? They don't have any clout.
So I'll tell you that, like, Environment Hamilton's not a City of Hamilton body.
No, I know.
Lukasik, you're speaking to our Director of Climate Change.
I've dealt with that.
Yeah, slush fund's not probably the word. I gotta apologize at council tomorrow because of language you shouldn't use. So I'm gonna tell you, slush fund is probably not the right word you're looking for. The way it works is they have a $2.5 million account. Our employees in all our divisions have the ability to apply to use those funds towards projects that are happening in Public Works, whether it's our fleet department, it could be our forestry department. So our departments get to put together basically a business case as to why they want to draw on this funding. And obviously, the business case has to tie into climate change and what the climate change department's trying to do. And yeah, I understand. You know, for you, it's not maybe at the top of the list. Yeah, I agree with the federal government spends a ton of money on climate change. Yeah, no, I agree. Sometimes we take on stuff that maybe is not a City of Hamilton priority. Again, the federal government and the provincial government spend a lot of money on climate change. We are also spending money on climate change. Back to the balancing act.
Well,
how much can we spend?
The federal and provincial budgets already have that in there. We don't need a third party in there and pay them as well.
I understand.
That slush fund is a lot of money. $2.5 million can go on that budget rather than in the pockets of those that have no rules or regulations or laws to implement them. They should be gone.
I got it. I hear you loud and clear. Anyone else?
So recently, the federal government in their budget stripped out the tree planting. They were gonna do like $1 billion worth of tree for climate change. They're not gonna spend that money now. How does that affect Hamilton? Because we've been planting a lot of trees all over the city. Are we gonna stop that, or?
I don't know if we use federal money for that.
No, we don't use federal money. And we still have a council directive in terms of increasing our tree canopy. So I don't expect that program to change. In fact, one of the climate change programs was to provide a pilot or temporary program for individuals for tree plantings in their backyard. So tree canopy is still a council directive in terms of increasing our tree canopy, and that program I expect will continue for 2026.
Anyone else? Oh, you're coming back again? Not about the slush fund?
No.
All right.
Jamesville.
Jamesville, yes, we can talk about Jamesville. I think. Stop me if I say something I'm not supposed to say about
That
Jamesville.
was torn down. The reason it was torn down with the activity on the harbor and the trade tracks and everything else. Actually, where I worked, Slater still had an impact from the trees going by there.
Yeah, seeing rail.
Buildings. That's now gone. So you're tearing it down. You plan to put more in there? So I had a meeting with the Hamilton Harbor Commission years ago. So if you put the same kind of setup in that area, you're going to see an impact from the future plans with the harbor. It's going to get bigger, and that's good for Hamilton for sure. To make Hamilton a port bigger, more grain towers, more trains, more trucks, all of the pollution item, right? So that's going to be, if you build there again, it's going to be the same crap again.
So you're talking about Jamesville, or you're talking about Peoria?
The Jamesville.
The Jamesville redevelopment.
Yeah, it's all tore down.
Yes.
And the reason was because its impact from the traffic, the trains, the noise, all that was part of the reason they tore, nobody got there.
So we tore.
It was empty for years.
Yeah, it was empty for a few years, but it was, the reason why it sat empty for those years is because we were in, and again, stop me if I go into areas where I'm not supposed to, but we were in litigation with CN Rail.
Yeah.
The plan was not for them to sit there like that for all those years. The plan was to get an agreement done and rebuild there. We had an agreement, a private-public agreement. There was, the developers were gonna give, they were building, I can't get into the full details, but there was gonna be a tower built for City Housing Hamilton. There was gonna be new townhouses built there. They were gonna redevelop it to increase the units, get some more affordable housing, update the housing because the ones that were there were destroyed. And then CN Rail does what CN Rail does, which is just stop everybody in
So
their
will have
tracks.
an impact if you build there from CN.
Yes, but there's ways to mitigate those impacts, right? Using certain building standards, knowing that you have a train coming through, you can work around. A developer wouldn't have, I don't think a developer would have tied themselves to a project they didn't think they could have built with a train.
But you, being a member of council,
Yes.
must know that there's going to be future plans of expanding Hamilton Harbor. Is that correct?
If we're talking about period, yes. Yeah, we have 9 development blocks there, yeah.
The green towers and the ships that stop there to get their grain or whatever they do, and the train, whatever they do, that's going to expand. Like I said, that's good for Hamilton if it happens.
Yes,
But that's going to have an impact on noise, pollution,
Absolutely, yeah.
everything else.
the
So
good with
whether
that.
it's a good idea to build there again, I don't think so.
Yeah, the problem is for everything we think, there's someone else that'll tell you different, right? So it's, I'm not saying you're wrong and I'm right, I'm just saying that's,
but
you know,
I
that's the
did do
direction.
a tour with some of the members from council down that area, and the grain towers, even though they're not destructive,
Yep,
they are a nuisance dust.
yes.
You get all over everything, cars, you
Yeah,
leave your window open, it's black,
yep,
dirty. It's not a good area to live in, really. So to expand in that area, it's kind of questionable.
anybody else? Well, Mike, Kirk, I think you're getting off the hook here. Thanks for coming. Kirk, thank you. We'll see you, I guess we'll see you tomorrow.
So we're leaving. Now you can tell the counselor what you really want.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you.
You'll read about it tomorrow.
Okay. So yeah, we can, again, I'll take any questions that are property tax related, Ward 14 related. I'm really here to open the floor to everybody. And if there's anything I can help explain from a mayor's directive perspective, I can help with that too, but we can go first, by the way, yeah.
Bendemeer and Paradise.
Bendemeer and Paradise, yeah.
Paradise is bike lanes.
Paradise has a bike lane,
And so
yeah.
those dotted lines, so if you want to turn right onto
Mohawk,
Bendemeer.
no, Bendemeer, yeah.
You've moved over. Now, there's this big white painted line, solid painted line, with slight cross hatching. Are we allowed to pull into that turn, or do we stay in the main center lane?
I would say, if I'm going off by memory, they are finding ways to reduce, let's say, right, traffic running, going this way, and then someone being able to make a right at the same time. And the reason for that, unfortunately, is the amount of
Exactly.
pedestrian deaths that we're seeing.
So my point is, I'm staying in that center lane
Yeah,
with my signal, telling people
And
I'm
see-
going there, and the guy goes behind me on the bike lane, and those, I was always told, there's a solid white line, you don't cross it. But
I can tell you the biggest, one of the biggest challenges we have in the city is the way people drive.
Oh, it is.
And that has nothing to do with, you know, people will tell you, well, that's because of the way your roads are built.
No.
Okay, fine. I think at the end of the day, no matter how the road is built, driver behavior can always help with how poor maybe the road construction is. The problem we have with that is, how do you address driver behavior? How do you expect your neighbor who's running at 80 kilometers an hour through a side street because he's trying to get home
Number
quicker?
one, they just came along, painted these roads, all of a sudden, there's these lines.
Yes.
None of the neighbors knew what it meant. Our
Yeah.
yard going the other way. There's nothing in the paper.
Yeah,
There's nothing on the city, there's no education.
The education piece is missing for sure,
Yeah.
from a standpoint of,
You guys mentioned Bendemeer, a bike.
yeah, it's a bike,
Park Boulevard.
free
you know,
boulevard, yeah.
you know. But nobody knew what's happening. I go up north and I come home and there's spike boulevard sign.
And I think,
Come home and there's heat lines on the road.
yeah, and I've had conversations with staff, and I'm not blaming staff. What I'm saying is we're doing things that I don't know that we were, and again, I've only been here 3 years. It feels like 100, but 3 years. I think we're doing a lot of things that we never used to do.
Right.
And I think the one piece that's missing, not just on this example, but just overall, is communicating what we're doing to the residents. Whether it's we're changing, you know, like we redo a park, they say, well, it's on the website, Councillor. Residents can go on the website and say they want to see a park in a certain manner. Well, not everybody wants to go on the website. Not everybody has a computer. Not everybody knows how to do it. So I think better communication with our office so that we can share that information, and just better communication to the neighbors that are affected with whatever change they're doing. Drop something off. And I've asked staff, we have no issue doing it. We've done it in the past. We'll go and put papers out. We'll put it in our e-news. We'll put it in our e-blasts. But education and communication is definitely something that can improve, but driver behavior is going to be extremely difficult to change, for sure. Because, you know, even we say, well, the only way a cop's going to get this is if he's sitting right there at the exact same time that your neighbor decided to cut in front of you to make a right-hand
The
turn.
woman who was driving on her phone.
Oh, yeah.
It's only illegal if I get caught.
Yeah. Well, the phone's more
So
important than
when
driving.
you do a good attitude, you know what I mean? But anyway, thank you.
Congratulations, you're on the police board.
Did you say condolences or
No,
congratulations?
now you can answer a couple questions.
Sure.
What's
I've only had one meeting, boss.
What's the proportion now? It's the whole mountain, went to 14. The proportion of police officers, lower city versus upper city. I never see, or hardly ever see, a police officer in Ward 14. Hardly ever. Every once in a while, Pat's sister-in-law comes in and she and drops, and I say, well, why don't you just stay in the neighborhood a little longer? People may think we have police on it. Really, people are making turns when they shouldn't be, they're going fast. That's all, but, you know, there's no deterrent because there's no police officers around. Just to do a visual drive every once in a while.
Yeah, and I've had these conversations before I was on the police board with the chief about visibility, the lack of visibility, the lack of, you know, we have a traffic safety unit. I think it's 18 officers. I think it's 16 or 18 officers that are focused on the everyday sort of stuff, the running stop signs, the speeding, you know, the dangerous driving, those sorts of things.
Each shift?
No, totally.
No, so the traffic safety unit is made up of 18 officers that work at different times for the whole city. So, like for a night, like tonight on the mountain, so Division 30, which is the mountain station, I think our minimum is 16. So when you think about 16 though, that is basically from the border of Stony Creek Mountain, East Mountain, all the way across the mountain, all the way out to Flamborough. So we sent two guys, two men or women out to Flamborough. There's one in Dundas, I think 1 or 2 at Ancaster, and then we split the other 6 to 8 across the entire mountain, all the way out. Keep in mind that includes Binbrook, Glanbrook, and all that area. Now the one thing we're missing is, let's say there is a fatality on East Mountain. There's a car accident, someone dies. There's going to be a heavy response.
Yes.
They're going to need people to control traffic. They need people to secure the scene. All the things that come with police work. I'm not a police officer, but you're going to need heavy presence. So they start pulling from all areas, which takes people out of their areas and working there. Now, I don't think it's a secret to everybody. I think sometimes we like to talk that the percentages are going down when we talk about crime, but it's the type of crime we have in the city now. I mean, I've been born and raised in this city. 10 years ago, I didn't have to worry about gun crime. There weren't shootings just happening. There were shootings, but they weren't the frequency that we have now. Our population's much bigger than it was 10 years ago. There's a lot more things happening in the city. And it takes away from the everyday policing that people were used to, where police officers would just drive through a neighborhood just to check things out, right? Because they were seeing if someone was running a stop sign, or they've had a call saying, hey, there's been some people speeding in this area. And we still do that, Christine. If you email our office and say, there's this stop sign that continually gets run, we send that to the crime managers. They put that out. But I can tell you, I've been on a ride along with police officers. When they start their shift, the backlog from the shift they're taking over from, there is no time for proactive policing. You don't have to take it from me, you can take it from the chief, listen to our board meetings. He will explain that to you. There is very little time for proactive policing. They come in and they're already, and that's why you asked for, we just approved a unit for gender-based violence. So right now, when we were having a domestic situation, our officers would answer the call, go to the incident, deal with the incident, and then stay on the incident, whether that's, dealing with the victims, all the things that come with that. Those officers are taken off the street. So that officer that's dealing with that's supposed to be doing the proactive policing that residents are expecting, are tied there. I went on my ride along, we had an overdose on East Mountain. Paramedics sat there for an hour and a half waiting for us to arrive, because we came from a suicide call where we had to taser the young lady so she wouldn't hurt herself. Now, then the cop had to go to the overdose and wait for the investigation unit to come up. So now he's sitting there waiting. So it's, when you start seeing the inner workings and the trickle effect of being tied into these situations, and listen, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying the police, no one's perfect. Not a politician, not a police, not a teacher. We all have areas where we can improve. The police does too. And I have no issue telling the chief that we want to see the police officers in the community doing proactive community policing. We're just not there. We don't have the people. And the major crime is taking people off the street. And we have a ton of people on WSIB. And I can't explain why that is, but we have a ton of people on WSIB.
I'm not finished yet.
Oh, you're not done yet? Okay. We got 5 minute time limit. I talk too much, I think.
Non-management police officers in Hamilton, approximately how many?
Civilian?
No, police officers, not management though. They, for patrol. Ballpark.
No idea.
Okay, proportion, Lower City, Upper City. Do we get 50-50, 25%, 10%? Because we don't see it.
It's similar, I would say on the regular shift, but then there's the increased stuff. So there's the Corps Patrol, which is an increased service to the Corps outside of their regular complement. So no, it wouldn't be exactly the same, because the mountain doesn't have a mountain Corps Patrol specific to a certain area like the downtown has. And there's obviously a reason for that due to some of the issues we deal with in the lower city, but we have those issues in a lot of areas, so I understand why people would feel like the entire city needs the same amount of service everywhere. We don't have the capacity.
But we see our taxes and how much goes towards policing, but we don't see the policing. And that's not fair to taxpayers.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And I've passed that message, and I'll continue to pass it on.
And I know it's not
to the
true.
chief. But
Does it make sense? I mean, you have the police behind us.
Oh, I understand all that.
On E16, somebody walks in the street and somebody doesn't like it, that's one thing. There's a gun downtown, that's where
I appreciate that too.
And there's a tendency of people thinking it's not fair because this is where I live, but we all are interconnected.
Yes.
It is the city of Hamilton, and there are benefits to living on the mountain that accrue from downtown. You don't have the population density.
But we still have to have presence.
yeah, no, I think the whole city needs that presence.
I'd like to have everything.
Yeah,
And not pay for it either.
My wife says I'm not allowed to have it. Right?
So getting them back in the schools is probably like, no?
Getting them back into the schools, that's a school board decision. That's not we can't force that, nor can the Hamilton Police Service. I don't know that we would even have I believe the chief says right now they've redeployed the officers that were working in this.
That's what I mean, like, there's
So-
nobody available.
No, they would have to reintegrate the program, which I don't even know if they want that though. Like I don't know if the school boards have asked for that.
They should.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on.
You would think with the youth crime, but, here and then we go up there and at the back. Go ahead.
You know, I think that you gotta educate the people how to drive.
Me?
You know the bike lanes? The other day I was on Stone Church, near Upper Wellington. I see this guy coming with a bike. I was about 3 cars from the stoplight. I seen him, so I slowed down. The guy in the first car in front of me, he turns. This guy just rams it. And the guy laughed too. He didn't want to stay. The guy, I stopped. I asked the guy, he goes, the guy turned in front of me. I said, I seen that. Why? Because you don't expect people to be in these bike lanes. And the bike, actually, you know, the way I look at it, and I always preach to their work, they used to say, well, the guy didn't look when he backed up with a tow board. Well, who's going to get hurt? You seen them, why you walk behind them? And the thing, that's the same thing. Like, you know, if these guys driving bikes, they don't stop at a stoplight.
No.
They just make the turn, like, you know. Why? They're special? And then we put 3 stoplights for a bike and 2 for cars? What, they don't know how to operate with the green light from the car? That's extra money we're spending. Why? This is what the present. And those bumps on the road, the car can't go over? I mean, I see cars knock down telephone poles. You know what, I'm for environment, like, you know, for pollution thing. Then we put, oh, right turn on red.
Oh.
And there's, you know, like, Upper Paradise and Stone Church.
Yeah.
Okay, the one on Upper Paradise and Mohawk, at least they have it from time when the kids go to school. That's great. No, there's a place like that, you're sitting idly, and they want to do environment for the bike, so we don't pollute the air, and then you're stopping the air. I don't know, Tom, maybe I'm stupid.
I didn't.
You know, but common sense, I think, went out the door.
Yep, done that.
Are they doing a traffic survey at that corner?
Well, I'm gonna go here and then I'll, go ahead, sir.
Mike, I know you're fairly new on council.
Yes.
I've been impressed with you, to say the least. I've got a couple of hard questions for
There's
you.
some that aren't, but go ahead.
You as council members voted 16 out of 16 to remove the mayor's extra powers. Where's that gone?
That went to
And she was
the,
upset at that. They almost broke down. The mayor almost broke down. On TV, I've seen it. I
yeah,
watched the
so,
GIC meetings quite a bit.
yeah, that was a request to the province. That was a request to the province to rescind the strong mayor powers, but I have no update as, I mean, the province hasn't said they're gonna
The points
rescind.
that they said, you know, decision making from the mayor and council. Like I said, I was impressed with you so far. But this city has some problems here. We have a new bus terminal, had no ventilation. How can you work with no blueprint? You can't do it. They're engineers. Now that cost, we're probably ended up on us.
Well,
We're missing it.
Yeah, I can tell you we're definitely, going after the contractor. Obviously, we forgot to put the ventilation into it.
There's one other thing, that the last election, the voting, they had mail-in ballots that were too late
Yep.
to be counted. That should not happen again, because that was not right. It's a democracy in the first place. There's people that, I don't know where they were from, or who got them, but they were out the window for some reason. And most of us think it's another reason, and I won't go there. But it's not right that you have mail-in ballots. Someone designed it to be late, that's what it looks like, whether right or wrong. It's gotta stop that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the clerk in the new year will bring forward a report that'll talk about how he plans on running the upcoming election, and it'll spell out, voting locations, advanced polling, mail-in ballots, online, everything he's wants to do for the election, and then it'll come to council
Yeah,
to.
if someone said we're going to have mail-in ballots and it fails to be there on time to get counted, it should really still count. Somebody made a mistake at the official end,
Yes,
and they should be held to account for that mistake.
yeah,
Those numbers that went out on mail couldn't change the outcome of that election. I'm just saying, it didn't look good.
I didn't have any control over that, though, just so
I know you weren't
All right,
there,
I guess.
but you're there now.
Oh, Joe Biden, but
I watched.
any other, I've seen a hand up. Oh, yeah.
Upper Paradise and Mohawk,
Upper Paradise and Mohawk, yes.
are they doing any sort of traffic survey plan for it? Because,
I've heard loud and clear from the parents of Regina Monday. I've heard loud and clear for the residents on Buckingham and all the surrounding areas.
it's a mess.
Yes. So the unfortunate part is the traffic survey / study will take a few months for them to collect data that they feel they can come back with a legitimate answer as to what they found. My experience over 3 years, a lot of the traffic studies come back saying the opposite of what I hear from residents. And I don't believe that's because the residents are lying or the traffic study is wrong. I think it's just the way they do it, and it's tied to provincial policy and mandates. So the provincial legislation says this about the percentile of speeding. We track 30 cars, they went this fast. If it doesn't meet these thresholds, they look at it and say, well, it didn't meet the thresholds, there's no need for traffic calming or any sort of upgrades to the intersection because the traffic study didn't show any data that proves to us we need to do anything. What I try to explain to our staff is if we have one fatality in an intersection, we don't need a study. Like we need to improve the intersection. So the other hard part around schools especially is how schools were built. And you think of a school like Regina Monday, how old it is. You look at their parking lot, which is, I don't even know if they have enough parking spots for their teachers, let alone school buses that have to get in there, people dropping off their kids. So the design is hard. Chinook School's in the same boat. Chinook School, I think they got 8 parking spots in the front of it. Holbrook.
And Holbrook is.
Holbrook, you got buses, you got
And that's,
Ari Riddell.
so that's the other question, like Sanatorium Road.
Yeah.
Everybody else seems to get the speed bumps. And we keep getting told Sanatorium Road, oh, no, we can't put them there.
Yes, staff's not big, so there's certain roads we're not allowed to put them on. And that's not our rule, that's a provincial rule. Like, someone asked me to put speed bumps on Mohawk Road. You can't.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not happening. I don't know if Sanatorium fits that bill or not. I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying, what staff will tell you is that, sometimes the speed bumps also increase cut through. So they'll start going around the speed bumps and cutting through
That's
side
true,
streets.
I don't want them on my street.
So I'm not saying, there's areas where I think the speed bumps are warranted, and I think staff does a good job of doing that. And sometimes they're by petition because residents don't care what the study brought back. They want speed bumps because they believe it's gonna help with safety with their kids playing out front and these kind of activities. I think the biggest change for me from when I grew up in the ward to now is the increase in cars and young drivers. Up until I was 18, my parents drove me around. I think there's a lot of young drivers. I think there's a lot more drivers. I think you see people that can't afford houses but can afford a car. So that's why you have you look at Chinook Heights that was built brand new. There's a family of 4 living there, and the mom and dad have a car, but the son and daughter have a car. Why? Well, they're not moving out because they can't afford to buy a house, but they can afford to buy a car. At the same time, we've reduced parking restrictions. So we're taking parking away, but we have an increase in people driving cars. So it's like we got a bunch of bad things happening all at once, right? So trying to curb bad driver behavior. I don't know how you do that. We can educate and we can communicate, but people are making a choice to speed in the neighborhood they live in. Like these are people from Oakville that are coming to, you know,
No,
Buckingham and doing 60 kilometers.
8:30 last night, we had 8 of them going up,
Yeah.
down West 33rd Street, like flying by our house.
Probably live on West 32nd.
No, 33rd.
I don't think
Yeah, it's crazy.
speed bumps work, because they put speed bumps in front of the schools.
Yeah.
And now all I hear is people just roaring off that stop sign, going to the next stop sign.
Speed.
Like from 27 to Upper
Oh, okay.
Paradise, they're just roaring, you know. Didn't even work.
You know, so the speed bumps have made it worse
We've got half
Yes.
speed bump and trying to make up time to
for
get
the.
here.
Speed between speed bumps.
Speed. I thought I seen someone saying that. Right here? Did you have a question? Did you have a question? I thought I seen your hand.
I had a question. Question is very simple. You said the crime has gone up from here. You grew up, you were born here. So what is the serious plan by the city? Is the city can do something about it? Is city thinking about something to do it, or just to?
In regards to crime?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can't be a city alone plan, because the justice system is not something we control.
Okay.
So youth crime, the Young Offenders Act, we have no jurisdiction over that, right? So
I know that, but
Yeah.
do the city council or the city as a whole talk to the provincial level or the federal level that something should be done?
absolutely we do.
Sure.
We sometimes other municipalities send it, and we will jump on that municipality, say we are encouraging you to do this. We have representatives from our city at the provincial and federal level that are asking those governments to do more on bail reform, do more on young offenders. Like, we got a Young Offenders Act. We have kids committing crimes with bear spray. They go in, they come out the next day. Those are dangerous crimes. This isn't, you're going in and you stole a chocolate bar. Okay, you made a mistake. It's a chocolate bar. We've got serious crime happening. If you can ask the chief, we have 14 to 16-year-olds in this city. They're one of the highest population of kids carrying firearms. That's not something the city alone and the Hamilton Police Service alone can do. And we need a concerted effort from all levels of government, not just, and we advocate for it, I do. Some people believe policing is not the way to fix it. There's other ways to do it. I think parents have a responsibility. I think parents have a responsibility to raise their sons and daughters in a way where they're not carrying a gun at 14 years old. Why are they carrying a gun at 14, right? So it's not just something I can fix as a counselor, it's everybody.
Not a legal gun.
So,
you can have an illegal gun for 500 bucks. That's not
You know what? In the olden days,
those days are gone.
but if a policeman took you home, you weren't scared of the policeman. You were scared when you got home, your father would teach you a lesson. So today, the parents today, they said, oh, the teacher said this to you? Oh, let's sue them. Let's go there and say this. That's where the system is going down the hill. Because there's no respect for the teachers, there's no respect for the police, nobody anymore.
It's a political
anything. Well, don't give them homework because it interferes with hockey. What's it?
Why are you gonna bring up hockey?
That's his next one.
That's the thing.
Listen, I can't fix driver behavior, I can't fix
I
parenting.
understand, but if they don't change the law, because today a 14-year-old kid, he's very intelligent. He's better than us 50 years ago.
Yeah.
The law was made 50 years ago. They got more information, they go on the website. If the law doesn't change, and even the bigger criminals, that's what they do. They retreat these young guys because they say, oh, you go in, the next day you're out.
Yes.
That's a federal problem. But
That's what
And the hard part is the federal and the provincial government have the most ability to affect change.
Yeah, but they don't do
Right?
it.
We can do the police work.
Yeah.
We had the polar bear unit went out, busted a bunch of, a big, group that was stealing vehicles. Right? We busted them. Halton, I got friends in Halton, they busted them. What happens? There's sometimes more than half that get released. Right? So and what that also does is it's discouraging for a police officer.
Oh,
When people say, well, what do we need, police, like, all we're doing is increasing police, come on, you guys, you guys make what are you guys doing? Well, they're working, they're arresting people, then they're back out on the street. Again, I'm not saying every police officer is the greatest thing in the world. I'm saying that it's very discouraging to arrest criminals and find out 2 days later that someone's gonna let them out because, well, they guaranteed us that they're gonna come back. We got a $2,000 surety that they're gonna show up in court in 2 months. That person's getting caught stealing the car a week later.
Yep.
Out on a surety that he's gonna show up in court. And
That's the court
frustrating.
backlog too, right?
Yeah.
The courts have backlog. 15-year-old stolen 3 cars in the past 3 months.
Yeah.
Sitting at home chilling,
You do something.
nothing done about it.
Well, enough, yes,
Did you see another embarrassment in the news today?
I try not to read the news, am I in there?
Jared, no? The guy got $200 fine
Who got
for
it?
feeding a squirrel.
Dan.
In Hamilton?
Yeah.
That's in the bylaw, to give him $200 fine for feeding a squirrel.
Dan Miles.
Bring the coyotes back.
So curious, Mike, where do you stand on the video camera problem?
I can't hear you, sorry.
The cameras, surveillance cameras, household cameras. What's
Where
your,
do I stand
what's
on?
your thought on it?
My personal thought of the city's,
The cities.
No, not the cities, like you as a councillor, where do
Yeah,
you
listen,
stand for that?
I think people should have the right to have security cameras that will police their property.
Yeah.
I don't agree that you should be able to police your neighbor's backyard because your camera is up here and it can oversee your neighbor's backyard. I think that's an invasion of
Okay,
privacy.
yeah.
If my kids are in the
But like the
backyard.
front of your house, it's gonna do your street, right? It's
Yeah,
gonna do front of your house,
and
your street.
I got no issue if it captures part of the
You got
street.
cameras on your house?
Sorry?
You got cameras on your house?
I do.
There you go. We all like them, we all help the police.
Yeah, all
But
I'm
you're right,
saying
not
is,
the back into someone's yard.
I don't believe your camera and gives you the right to invade on someone else's property.
Exactly.
That's my thing. You shouldn't have the right to say, well, yeah, my camera expands across the street and onto your front lawn and to your front door of my neighbor across the street. I don't think you should have the right to be able to watch your neighbor's front door. And their kids who might open the door, and their 3-year-old that might not have anything but a diaper on because he's having fun.
Right.
That is an invasion of privacy, in my opinion. I think if you're covering the road and your own property and only that, absolutely. If it helps the police, great. I don't think it's for the police. I think sometimes it's just the comfort of knowing that you can be out and you can look at your phone and see that your property is safe. Your dog is okay, the cat's okay, your kids are supposed to be home at 9. Perfect. My kids are home at 9. So I'm all for that stuff, but I don't know that it should not invade the privacy of your neighbors. I agree with.
But the trouble with the cameras is, even though you had it sitting there, even your Ring doorbell goes right across the street. And even if you turn it down, it goes up the street and it goes both ways.
Yeah.
I share my camera with the guy across the street.
With permission.
With his permission, he shares mine.
Yeah.
It's just to keep an eye on
Yeah.
properties with different things going on.
Yeah.
And listen, I think if there was common respect for things like there used to be, the problem you have now is you can't say to your neighbor, well, listen, I want to have a camera that shows everything because it makes me feel safe, and I just happen to get to watch you in your backyard while you're gardening, right?
You don't want it in your backyard, you want it in the front.
We're talking in the front of the
Yeah.
street.
As long as it's not invading privacy, I don't have issues with security cameras. Especially if your neighbors are all, if you're all friendly, you're probably using each other's resources. So, hey, did you check your camera? Did you see it?
Yeah, well, their daughter was being followed.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
the guy would go around the house, looking to get in the house.
Yeah.
He was not giving up.
That's the benefit of
Yeah.
having those cameras.
The police will be at your door anyway if there's an accident. If you see a camera on the house, they'll be knocking on your door.
Yeah, they'll come if there's something happens, they
That's a
go walk down the
good
street.
point.
We had that, remember with the big bunch of all was wrong?
Yeah.
The guy's bike was stolen, he came back out, he took off on foot, you heard that?
I remember that.
Here, Kim.
The police got down to the door and said, well, you don't have time, give it to us.
We'll look at
What do
it.
you want, you know? But obviously, he didn't follow the other bit, you're gonna be fair,
Anybody else?
I have one really quick one just easy one. West 33rd, they are working on sidewalks, approaches.
Yep, that's the sidewalk program, yeah.
Do they plan on finishing it, or is it gonna just sit like this until the spring? It's a mess. Something happened, I guess, with the contractors, right? So we still have like parts of the road that are part, like at the sidewalk that are still dug up with the big pylons there.
They, I guess we'll have to follow up, and they told us, a couple weeks ago, they were wrapping up.
Oh, no, it's still there.
So the wrapping hasn't happened.
No, but that's not.
No mold, there's no mold on the wrapping.
No, no problem. Thank you.
Oh, Christine?
Thanks, Christine.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. Please take, water, coffee, and please take my contact info. Feel free to reach out to the office anytime. Christine is, pretty good at answering. You might not like the answers, but we'll get you one. You're gonna get an answer. I can't promise you're gonna like the answer, but you'll get an answer.
Christine's got the best answers.